When one of our viewers contacted us, Eric, he said, I have an X3M. Would you like to do a video on it? Since I've already done a full, complete video on the X3, a lot of this is carryover. So we're going to focus on the M specific stuff, and the rest, you can watch the other video. Now let's be real, SUVs and CUVs are taking over, and a lot of them are hideous, including some of them from BMW, but the X3 globally looks great. Their proportions are right, and that's all I'm gonna say. You saw the exterior montage. Now when you step foot in the MX3, the way that he has spec'd this out, the tannish gray leather, or the orangish salmon inserts on the leather look great. There's a lot of character in here, and this is what happens when you use a little bit of diversity in materials. There's matte chrome, there's some shiny bits. The gauge cluster is all digital, but just subtle rings around it, so it doesn't look like a giant screen. This has the previous generation iDrive setup, which is far more simple to use than the current generation. Just kind of click and go where you need to. Then you have your M buttons on the steering wheel, and this is how you set up the memory mode so you don't have to go into the infotainment or hit all these buttons to change every single setting, because like most M cars now, you have Sport, Sport Plus, you have Comfort, and every single mode is customizable. So having these two here, it's a godsend. Now, pretty much all the other features here are similar to what you find in an X3. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse with it, but the back seats are very usable. He's got a child seat or a base for a child seat, and there's still plenty of room in the front seat with that there. The back seats fold down, and there's just enough space here to be larger than a wagon, but bigger than a hatchback car, and then the outward proportions aren't gonna take up like 5 car spaces, or you can still fit it in your garage with room to spare. And I think that's why the X3, specifically the X3M, is such a usable product. Let's head into the shop and talk about the mechanical attributes of the M-specific version of this.
So Mark, we're underneath yet another BMW product. This is the X3M non-competition variant. And what essentially this is a M3 wagon that they've lifted 3 feet in the air, because we'll never get an M3 wagon here in the United States. And this has the all-new 3-liter S58 engine, which will be found in the upcoming M3 M4.
Does M stand for Mexico?
No, it stands for Muy Bien Motorsports.
Oh, okay. It just says Mexico here, so I was a little confused. Why is that there, Jack?
Well, this is a North American product. This is built in Spartanburg, and some of the parts, not all of them, are sourced from our domestic market.
All right, the front. We have M-specific components on the suspension. It's all aluminum. You have Monster M brakes. You have an oil cooler here. You have 2 intercoolers in the front, and there are wheel spats and little things for cooling and aerodynamics, and then you have an aqueduct there that flows air into the center differential. And this center differential, Jack, it's straight out of the
M5. In fact, the transmission, the ZF8 speed, and the whole rear diff and all-wheel drive system come right out of the M5.
That's a good value.
Yes.
I'm even more excited to see the back.
All right, let's head there.
We're in the back, and it looks like the Germans built a nice musical instrument for the mechanics that are going to be working on this. Listen to that.
Mark, that xylophone plays the note of motorsports, because this diff comes right out of the M5, as I mentioned earlier. However, unlike the M5, it will not go into drift mode. So most of the time, this is rear-wheel drive. However, when it detects slip, it'll send 10% of the power to the front.
So you can't turn it off in the infotainment?
No, sadly you cannot.
So for me to be a big boy, I got to buy an M5?
Yeah, big boys only buy M5s, Mark.
Okay, all right. So what else we got back here?
Well, we have a bunch of, sadly, not aluminum components. Those are saved for 5 Series and up in the Clar architecture. However, you do get adjustable dampers and these aluminum braces.
And why would you need all this bracing?
That's because when you have almost 500 horsepower, it's probably wise to stiffen up your chassis. The last thing of note back here is this rear exhaust, which is active, meaning based on the drive mode, it'll open up a valve, and it also acts as a diffuser.
But it doesn't make any synthetic or artificial tuning-induced pops and crackles.
Nope, at least not in the non-competition model.
Oh, okay.
So with that, Mark, let's head to the engine.
Before Jack takes out the jazz hands and gives you the old razzle-dazzle on this, one of the main reasons why BMW has consistently been better than the competition is the money they spend underneath, which we already talked about. The architecture at its core has almost a perfect 50-50 weight distribution no matter what product you get in, from X3, X5, doesn't matter. And the cross balance is so good that when you get out there and drive it, that's why it has this BMW feel to it that other car companies are not putting in it. But the big story is this.
Yes, so this is the S58, is the replacement to the S55 that was found in the prior generation M3, M4. However, this has 90% new parts, though it is distantly related to the B58, which is a single turbo inline six. So the S58 is the most powerful inline six BMW has ever built, and it has the highest specific output of any engine they've built. That's largely due to the fact that it is a very stout engine. It puts out 18.9 PSI, and it can withstand those levels of boost because everything inside it is forged. Forged pistons, rod, crank, etc.
So it's 2 turbos instead of the one on the
Yes.
B58?
One turbo for each set of cylinders. So the first turbo does 1 through 3, the other turbo does 4 through 6.
How do they handle cooling?
5 heat exchangers. You have 2 radiators, 2 intercoolers, and an oil cooler, plus you have a trans cooler.
What did you say the numbers were? Like the 0 to 60 and quarter mile numbers?
So the X3M competition, the faster variant of this, does 0 to 60 according to Car and Driver in 3.3 seconds, which is astronomically fast.
Why do you need that in here?
Well, sadly, which we're going to talk about a little bit in the drive, the reality is Americans don't buy sports sedans. They buy SUVs. And what BMW's attempted to do is turn a SUV into an M3.
To me, it's very strange, Jack. You could take a 1,000 horsepower motor and throw it in a Civic. It's still a Civic. It's still what it is. It's not that exciting. You could throw 5,000 horsepower in a garbage truck. It's still a garbage truck. This is still an SUV. I can't get excited for it. Goodbye.
It's like, oh!
Oh, what are we doing, Jack?
I'm about to show the general public and why the X3M makes for such a badass daily driver.
Okay. Oh!
So yes, it is alarmingly fast. I'll leave it at that.
How's it in the corners, Jack?
It handles better than probably anything this size has any right to do. It really,
Wow, man, this thing hauls ass.
is very impressive.
So, what's the competition to this?
So this competes with the Macan,
Uh-huh.
the AMG GLC 63, and well, and I guess the Audi SQ5.
Okay, how does this handle?
It honestly handles like you put I imagine the new M3 that's coming out, on stilts. You raise it up 4 feet off the ground, and yet it has great body control. It feels very rear-driven. It rotates under throttle and braking. And the all-wheel drive puts down a ton of power.
Jesus. You know what? Just driving this a little bit and feeling you drive through this X3M, even without the competition, has far more overhead and capability than probably 95% of the owners could even attempt to get at or tap on the street. I'm not quite sure why this has become so normal. I mean, I'm kind of thinking of it like this is the era we live in, where you can get a small or medium SUV and it's faster than sports cars, almost
supercars like 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. So let's get into what BMW does right. And every video, it's a broken record. BMW absolutely has mastered the drivetrain engineering. This torque-converted ZF has 3 different shift modes, much like the old dual clutch setups did. You can kind of go soft, medium, or hard, or fast, whatever. And it does an amazing job at having the split personality of going flat out, shifting quick, downshifting quick, and then when you're driving, you never even notice. It is so smooth all the time. And then the engine. Something that they've also mastered with turbocharging is we could go out and do back-to-back pulls 20, 30 times, and you never notice any variation in timing being pulled, power decreases, power increases. It's such a consistent driving vehicle that I don't understand it. They must put all their money there because I don't understand how nobody else can do it as well as them for this price point.
The trans in particular, for being a torque converted automatic, is almost as good as the PDK. And that's from again, torque converted auto. It's extremely impressive. And this drivetrain, it definitely feels more turbocharged than the prior generation of inline 6 M motors, but still it's very, very
There's
good.
more of this surge, this oncoming push of power that just punches and punches and punches and pulls you all the way to the red line. And it just makes me wish, well, it revs out to what, about 7,300 RPMs?
Yeah.
I just wish that it revved out to 9,000 RPMs. You know, I wish that it still
you
had
could,
that.
but you'd be on a tow truck.
Well, yeah, that's true. I long for the naturally aspirated days, but this annihilates all the old cars. When we talk about like the E92, M3, the V8, and the V10, those sounded amazing, but this thing is so fast. And let's get into the deficiencies. As much as it's balanced, the all-wheel drive system pulls you out while still feeling rear-wheel drive biased, it rides so firm that it makes no sense for something like this. I could accept it if this was a sports car that you were just puttering around on the weekend, but even in comfort mode,
which we're in right now,
there's not enough variation between your Sport Plus setting where it firms up even more and your comfort mode is not what I would associate. Like, hey, if I want to put some friends and family on in here and go to the store, this would get really old, really fast in the Midwest where we live, where there's no budget for roads. That's almost the deal breaker. I don't know why they can't do that.
Yeah, I'm sure the argument that'll be made by BMW is that they need to stiffen this up to give it body control. But if you look at the Macan, which we drove, which drives, at least dynamically, every bit as good as this, it handles broken pavement about 1,000 times better.
Yes, it does. And so the big argument there is the Macan, to get it to this performance level, is an absolute rip-off.
It's over 100 Gs.
It's over 100 Gs to get this level of engine
with the same
performance.
options.
Yes. So, but here's the counterpoint. The Macan is not as fast, but I can utilize almost all the power on the street, whereas this I can't. And the Macan rides infinitely better. The Macan has figured out the balance of suspension, handling, performance, while killing your wallet. This gives you all the performance of like more of an extreme sports car that you would get as that one weekend toy, and blending it into the practicality of...
And being the... Again, this is a value proposition in a segment where value doesn't exist.
Yeah, a value $70,000 like smaller SUV, but that's the world we live in. Right?
No, and I give this car a lot of credit in that regards. Compared to the GLC 63 and the Macan, you're getting everything those cars offer for 25 grand less.
Yeah, and there are trade-offs, but what you make up for in performance is amazing. That's one of the reasons why this owner bought it. He bought it because of the Yuri and Jacob video from the Straight Pipes. They kind of sold this as being like insanely fun, and I don't think it's insanely fun, but he got it, he drives this every day, and he gets the fun out of it on his daily drive, and that's why he likes it.
It's the compromise you're making, right? Could you buy a sports car and a good daily at the same time for 70 grand? Yes. But if you're the guy who has to go to work every single day, has kids, doesn't have time to go to a track day, and he wants to enjoy his commute while still swindling his wife into agreeing that this is practical,
Yeah.
This is the best car you could possibly buy for that person.
Good point, and that's a good time to get into the final thoughts, Jack.
All right, Mark.
Final thoughts on the X3M, and a big thanks to our viewer Eric, who supplied us with his personal car and for also serving in the military. So let's get right into it. The pros are this. The X3 is one of the best BMW SUVs currently available. It's because of its size, its proportions, usability, and styling. It doesn't look horrific like some of the other models that they make. So it blends all the good things from the regular X3 if you strip away the M stuff. Now, when you add the M stuff on, this is one of BMW's best engine designs they've ever made. It's unbelievably powerful. Now, I'm not even joking. We're doing a video on the C8 right now, and everybody's like, oh, the C8's the best thing ever. If you don't get a good launch in the C8, this X3 would walk away from that. That's how fast it is. It is mind-bogglingly quick. And, you know, when I was driving it, I'm sitting here thinking, why do you need this? Well, I asked the owner, why did you want an SUV that is like a sports car underneath? And he's like, well, I need it to drive it every day. I need one car. I don't have time for a secondary car, and all the things that go along with it. I want it to be the family vehicle and the sports car. And I think that's where, for me, some of the pros and the cons are. You can clearly have this as your everyday vehicle, except you need to be prepared for a couple things. BMW has this strange thing about making their M cars horribly riding. It just rides way too stiff. And you get over bad pavement and it becomes abusive. Now you get out of something like their X50Is on most of their trim levels with the twin turbo V8s, those things ride like butter. And for a street car, I would love to see BMW just have a pure comfort mode for everyday driving. And then when you want to flip the switch and feel like you want to get beat up and go flat out, there's just not a good enough divide between soft and hard on the M products currently. That's really the only negative thing I can say about this. In terms of value, Jack brought it up, and you're like, how can you say $70,000 is a value? Well, it is compared to the competition. Audi's expensive, your Mercedes are more expensive, and the amount of performance you're getting out of this, granted, the interior is not the greatest place, it's kind of blandish and very corporate, but they make up for it in all the money they put in the chassis, which we talked about in the shop, and the drivetrain. It continues to further and further push the boundaries. And yes, I'm not the most excited about this. I would love to see this drivetrain in a true sports car and not an SUV. And, you know, once they do that, it's going to be mind-blowing. But again, if you want a high performance, decent looking SUV, this is one of the best things you can buy on the market. You just got to eat the cost and some of the negatives we talked about. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.